All right, welcome back. And here we go, exercise 5B. This time we're going to go ahead and set up this assembly file. Our second shot at an assembly, a bottom-up assembly, which again is an assembly created from an existing collection of previously completed parts. First thing we're going to need to go ahead and get the thing done that we see here, which essentially just is a Bluetooth device. It's a little bit of an older thing, and some of you, if you happen to be a little bit younger, might not recognize that, but if you've been around for a couple more years, it might look a little bit more familiar to you. All right, so let's go find those files. So to go do that, let's go over to the D2L, and we will find those in assignments. And we are going to find this Lab 5B, and we have a link to the Lab 5B parts. And once you get into there, you'll find 7 parts that you will need in addition to an assembly file of that completed thing. So go ahead and get those downloaded to your computer so that you have access to them. Get them unzipped. And when you've done that, we are ready to get going. File name for this new one is going to be Lab 5B video in my case. In your case, it might be a great idea for you and a helpful thing for me if you, in naming that Lab 5B, go ahead and tack on your last name to the end of that name, so that as I'm looking at these and reviewing files, that it's a little bit easier to tell the difference between everybody else's work as I'm opening those things up. All right, so first things first, we're going to get started. We're going to go locate that thing. It'll be in my downloads folder. That 5B parts. And here we go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts. First one we want to go ahead and grab is that rear bezel. And we're going to open that one. And instead of selecting and taking that automatic placement of the part, let's go ahead and change that to default so that our center of that part lies on the CSYS. Because remember, that is going to become important for future assembly files, including the ones on a midterm, most definitely, and some additional work beyond that as well. All right, so we'll drop that one off there. So we have our rear bezel. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the assemble icon again for that bottom up assembly. Next thing we need to go ahead and grab is going to be our PC board, our electrical board for the inside. So after we open that up, it sets up in the center right off to the center of the screen next to our first part. So now we got to go ahead and set up the placement using constraints. So to do that, we are going to locate a feature in here, and we're going to click on that inside edge of that hole. And then we're going to come and click on the outside of that post where that's going to sit. And we look at our degrees of freedom here. We still have 2 remaining. And we want to go ahead and eliminate those. So let's add a new constraint to this. And remember with this one, unlike the last one, we're not looking to do a motion study here because this is an assembly where the things are attached to each other and should stay that way. So we're not going to worry about changing that setting to go ahead and allow that motion. All right, so by default, when I choose that second one and set that second constraint on there, it's going to set it as a distance constraint. And we can either leave it as a distance constraint, reset that distance to 0, or if we just go with coincident, then those two are going to mate up just like we would like them to do. All right, so we have everything located there. We're going to hit OK, so we see our PC board. Next, we got to set up and set in our place to hold our multiple 2013 battery cells that would power this thing. So assemble, left click on there, and we're looking for the shield, the battery shield. We're going to open that one up. And let's get it a little bit closer to where we're working so it's a little bit easier to deal with. And we can see everything a little bit in closer proximity. All right, so we have the shield where the battery cells are going to rest inside of that. But first we need to set this up. So instead of just mating this up and having a coincident constraint, let's make sure that we get these things centered up. So we're going to choose a different one here. So in order to do this, we're going to center this up and we're going to choose the outside face of this battery shield. Okay, make sure we don't get any of those other things we don't want. So the outside there. And then we're going to click the outside face of where this is going to sit on here on the board. And now we get those two centered. Okay, so those things are concentric with each other. We're going to pull it out a little bit, and then we're going to set up our second constraint. So we're going to click on New. Click on the back face of that battery shield, and then on the upper face of this part of the board. And go ahead and hit OK. And we have those two locked together. All right, next we're going to need some batteries for that. So let's grab one of these 2013 cells, bring that in, move this roughly into place, and then similar operation to the last thing. We're going to go ahead and make sure that these are concentric. So I'm going to click on the outside of the shield. I'm going to go find the very outside face of the battery cell. So now we are concentric with each other. We're centered with each other. We still have this motion in here, so we want to stop that from happening. So let's add one new constraint. We're going to set up a coincident between that face of the battery shield and this rear face. Should be the positive side of that button cell there. And notice it is set up as a distance, so maybe this time let's go back and put that distance at 0 and enter that instead of changing it to a coincident and hit OK. Just for practice to do something else. All right, so pattern. We've used pattern in lots of things. We're going to do a different pattern where we've done a couple different ones before already. So first thing we do when we start a pattern, we're going to select a body, a solid, a part inside of here, which is going to be the 2013 cell first. Then we're going to click on our pattern button. And in the past, we have done some axis patterns. I think this is going to be the first one. It's going to be a directional pattern. So we want direction pattern. And then first thing we do after selecting that direction pattern is to let Creo know what direction we want that thing to be. So easiest thing to do is go find an edge that runs in the direction that we want to, like here, and click on that. Our arrow by default is fixed the wrong way, so we could flip that around so that it's going to come up the other way. We need to choose how many batteries we want. So we want 4. And notice that our 4 instances are pretty well spread out there. They're a lot farther apart than they need to. If I remember correctly, spacing of about 60 thousandths. From the start of one to the beginning of the next one should work pretty well. So let's see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And now we have 3 copies of that original thing. They are all stacked neatly on top of each other using that direction pattern. All right. So we have our 4 batteries housed in the shield. We need something to finish that connection. So we have that electrical flow between those 4 cells and our board. So let's find that part, which is going to be the connector. Hit open on that one. Similar to some of our other stuff, we're going to bring it in the general vicinity so it's a little bit easier to get this stuff set up. And let's go ahead and for our first constraint, let's get these things centered on each other. So let's pick the face of that battery. Let's pick this outer face of the connector. And it looks like they are sitting on top of each other, what they are. So let's make a little space in between the two. And we want to limit those degrees of freedom. So we bring them down to 0 in this case, because we don't want that connector moving around in that assembly. So we're going to add a new constraint. Click on the bottom face of that connector. And then on that negative face, that negative side of your upper battery cell, just like that. That coincident constraint works great there. We're going to hit OK. All right, we have our cells on the board, 4 of them. We have a connector on top of them. We have on our board, we have an LED strip here. We want to go ahead and next thing is going to be the diffuser for that, or the light frame as it's called in the parts. So we need the light frame next. We're going to open up that light frame. And the light frame is going to be a clear part, which we'll see when we go ahead and finish putting this together. So let's see here. So the posts on the bottom of this light frame, okay, these ones right here, those 2 posts are going to end up sitting right here. So let's zoom in far enough for this first constraint. Make sure we get this edge. And then we're going to want to grab the outer face of that post on there. So now we're aligned vertically with each other. We still have that extra degree of freedom. So let's go ahead and eliminate that one. And we're going to do that by setting this face. So we're adding a new constraint. That face on the board. Flip up so that we can see this face on the bottom. Keep it in frame here so you can see it. We're going to left click on that one. And we are set as a distance constraint right now. Let's go ahead and change that to just a coincident. And we have our light frame in place. It's locked in. There it goes. It goes clear now. We can see that that is just essentially there as a diffuser for the light from that board. All right, last thing, we need to go ahead and add that front cover to it. Now you could, if you wanted to, grab the one that we created in an earlier exercise. It was in one of the labs for exercise number 4, if I remember correctly. I'm going to go ahead and grab the one that's part of this folder of parts for this one, because there is a few differences between what we did in that one and this one. Dimensionally, they're the same, but there's a couple of details on the back side. So we're going to go with the front bezel. We're going to open that up. And then we're going to get a little bit cuter with how we're going to add these 2 together and set those up. So to line these 2 up, I want to use this face. Right, so let's go ahead and get back into there because I exited out of there. And again, when we do that, if we go ahead and click on that bezel, we can get back into the mode so that we can actually do something with that. So, all right, our first constraint is going to be right here. Okay, so that one, and then we're going to find its mate on the top. So mate of that one should be this face right here. Okay, so we should be lined up now that way. Right, and it looks, let's see, it'll look good. That looks right. All right, so one more. Let's bring the 2 faces. This one. and this one right here. Hit OK. Now we didn't quite get that one. That's okay though. So let's go back into this one again. Let's click that edit there. And let's see here. So we have two constraints. Let's find those, right? We have a coincident constraint and that distance constraint. Let's click on that distance one. And let's just change that offset, or we can change the type and make it coincident. All right, so if you click out of that, that's how you get back into it again. And how you can go back in there and edit those things again after the fact. All right, so we have things as we want them to be. Everything is set up together. Let's go back to this default view. Our standard orientation. And the last thing we got to do is we've got to create for the first time an exploded view of this assembly. So an exploded view shows us, as we see in our example here, it shows us all of our parts of the assembly in line, but things are just separated. So it shows you how things go together. So basically you show 1 degree of freedom in here where we can move these things apart. They're still locked in line, and it helps you visualize how those things are going to go together. So let's create that. And it's very easy once you have the assembly done and things are locked into place. We come back up here and we get into that assembly mode here. And we're going to click right here on Exploded View. And Creo's going to do its very best to give us an exploded view of that, and it does an admirable job, but it's not quite what we want. So we're going to click on Edit Position here. And now we can go ahead and grab these parts individually and make things look a little bit better. So they're still staying in line. I'm going to left click on the board and drag the board back so it's separated from that a bit. I got to come and grab the shield and bring that back so it's kind of sitting above that board. I'm going to grab the batteries and bring those out a little bit away. I get this connector out of the way a little bit more. Grab these batteries so I separate the 4 of them a little bit more. So we can see a little bit better. Maybe bring this out a little bit more. Let's bring this back. Let's give ourselves a little bit of space. Let's not move all the batteries again. Let's just create a little bit of room behind there. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Grab the connector, bring it a little bit closer to the top battery. Let's bring the shield. You could bring it over the top or out in the back. Which way did it have it? An example. Let's look at that again. Let's go for making it like it shows in there. So the diffuser is out in front of those batteries in the exploded view. All right, so let's keep that as that was. So let's move our front bezel out a little bit more. Let's move the light frame out a little bit more. There we go. Now we're looking like that does. And I think I like that the way that is. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And then just kick it up a little bit here before we go. Let's jump out of this mode into our applications mode. Go into Render Studio. And we'll get a nicer render of that. Now, suggestion, if you want it to look a little bit better even, is if you go ahead and make sure that your materials, again, match what we want them to be. So I'm going to close this real quick. and go through and change some of those materials on there if you'd like. And then try out, if you haven't tried it out yet, the Render Studio on there and see what you get. As it looks pretty neat. If you can do that real-time rendering, if you've got a video card of some substance in there, you should be able to do that. Older cards or a little bit lower end cards might have trouble doing it quite so fast. Not that this is a be all end all when it comes to gaming machines or anything here, graphics machines, but it's up to the task of doing this. So there we go. Lab 5B, go ahead and do two things for me. Get a PDF of that created and go ahead and send me also, don't worry about the files on this one because things get a little bit weird with assemblies. If you send me an assembly, you're going to have to send me the other files along with it. Don't worry about it. Just the picture on this one is going to be good because if I can see it, if it's lined up, you're not creating those parts. Just the PDF on this one is going to be more than enough. Don't worry about anything else. All right, so that's it for Lab 5B. Our second bottom-up assembly looks great. And something that'll come in handy for us a little bit in the next exercise when we start in with 6 and we start creating and transferring these 3D models and assemblies that we're creating into two-dimensional plans. And Creo really makes that process easy. So that's what's coming up next. All right, see ya.